Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Matt. I'm Patrick Grant, Vice President, Business Development here with exydoc. I'm joined today with Matt Zablotny, our CEO. And today we're going to talk about the mission that, Matt, you and I have been on of helping organizations understand why is it time to retire your spreadsheets. So let's talk a little bit about first exydoc, right? We are a provider data management company. That is what we are. We offer our proprietary software solution and a team of onshore professionals that help support all that data across now, 32 states. So we are certainly in a great position to talk today about why it's time to retire spreadsheets. So Matt, let's start there. Talk to us about why is it time for organizations to start thinking about that as a different transition?
If you think about the history of spreadsheets, this tool was developed to help with financial modeling, which is really still what it's being used for today in most cases, as some accounting, building budgets, financial modeling, those kind of things. But it's also evolved in many cases to be a tool that organizations use for functions that perhaps it's not built for. So we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the key facets that we see with this and maybe go through just a couple of questions that are important for us and hopefully give our viewers some insights as to why this is important.
Perfect. So let's start with the first one, Matt. Why are spreadsheets no longer the safe option for credentialing in 2026? Why, as an organization, should I consider that I need to move to a different option?
What we're seeing in 26 is data is moving fast. There is a lot more data that's required to properly credential a service practitioner in this space. And you have to manage all of that information, the data, the documentation, the details, all of that has to be pulled together in order to ensure that you're doing this in the most accurate and efficient way. You have license renewals, reattestations, taxonomies need updated, networks are constantly changing. All of this requires more than just a human being keying information into a static spreadsheet. It's a compliance risk. We see that organizations miss these expirations. We see that they miss reattestations, payer deadlines, because again, they're trying to do this in a tool that is not necessarily built for managing this key function.
So Matt, walk us through a little bit about, you talk a little bit about some of these changing rules. So what are some of the new 2026 compliance rules that make spreadsheets really risky to an organization?
What's interesting about some of the things we're seeing in early 2026 is that it's not necessarily new rules that are coming out, new guidelines. It's more so that the existing rules and guidelines are being enforced to a much higher degree. And this involves, in many ways, ensuring that the information that you have given to a payer based on the practitioners in your business or on your roster, that data is accurate. For example, 30 days is the standard for informing a payer of a change with a practitioner. For example, if somebody, a doctor terminates employment with your organization, you have 30 days to get that change made. And what you want to be able to do is to be able to do that in the most efficient and effective way possible. Payers are looking out for inaccurate directories, what they're calling sort of ghost network issues. And you have to be able to inform these payers quickly when any of these changes are coming for practitioners. So you want to be alerted to these things as they're happening. You want to understand when expirations are coming due, when out-of-date information is getting flagged. You want to be able to validate this information automatically. So compliance expectations have risen, and spreadsheets simply don't have the capabilities that you need to ensure that you're being compliant. Again, our PDM solution certainly does that for you. So it ensures that information isn't accidentally deleted, there's an audit trail. You have various ways to ensure that the information that you're maintaining, and then of course, giving to payers, is 100% accurate.
Matt, I like what you're talking about, especially with the automation function specifically. And we know as a platform, that's one of the key drivers that our customers really appreciate. There are those automatic prompts that we've baked into the platform that speak so specifically to what you're talking about with some of those enforcement changes we're seeing this year. So let's expand on that. How do spreadsheet errors impact public directories, patient access? What does that look like?
It now is very easy for errors that you're maintaining within your organization, as it say pertains to credentialing, for those errors to become public, right? Because the idea of accurate directories, accurate service locations for practitioners is becoming very, very, very important. For example, if you have a practitioner who is assigned to a certain service location, or let's say the payer assumes based on your information that they're working at that particular service location, and that in the directory for that payer is updated with that information, and it turns out perhaps it's wrong, that that practitioner isn't working at service location A, they're working at service location B. The error in your data becomes public very, very quickly. And we're seeing payers starting to audit for this, that they're calling to check on directories, they're auditing practitioners to ensure they're working at the place where, the service location where they're intended to be working. So the impact, increased risk for audits, compliance problems, patient complaints, lost referrals, perhaps financial penalties. And in a lot of cases, what we see is just delays in payment or no payment for services provided because of inaccuracies in this data. So again, going back to the notion of trying to manage all this complexity on a spreadsheet is just, it's very, very difficult. And it's going to become more difficult as we continue to move through 2026.
It sounds like
last question.
Love it. So, Matt, as you're talking through all this and helping all of our viewers really understand this and organizationally why it's important to them, modern technology, this is obviously a shift. Excel's been around, as you talked about, for a while. So what does a modern credentialing system offer that the spreadsheets won't do or can't accomplish?
It's operational and compliance protection is basically what we're telling organizations, right? Spreadsheets offer you very little of that. They're not alerting you to expirations as they're coming up for renewal, right? You have a license that's coming up for renewal. Our system is alerting you to all expirations within the platform within 90 days of that expiration occurring. So you have plenty of time to chase down new license, do a CAQH reattestation, all of that. So in addition to those compliance pieces, we want to be able to help providers have a centralized profile on all of their practitioners. And for all of the key people throughout their organization to have access to that data. So within our platform, it's not limited to certain users that can go in and see, information. It's anybody who's needed at the organization to go in and see those provider profiles, the enrollments, payer contracts, et cetera. So with that, you can help ensure that your data to the payers is correct. Their directories are then in fact accurate. And that of course makes you look very, very good as a provider. So we can streamline this. We can streamline the experience, and we've designed this to make it simple for organizations to achieve their goals. Patrick, 4 great questions. Appreciate you asking them and giving me the opportunity to answer. So I think that'll give some benefit to our organizations out there. Any final thoughts that you have?
Matt, this was great. I think you covered some terrific information this afternoon, going through this information, talking through some of the risks, some of what we're seeing, and certainly some of the reasons why an organization would want to consider, it might be time to get rid of my Excel sheet. This has worked for so long, and maybe that's been the case, but it might be time to consider something new. So I think you gave some invaluable information. So thanks for taking the time and spending the time with us today.
You bet. Thank you, Patrick.